that in our culture, we kind of run late, but we're pushing it a bit today, folks. So I'm going to begin. And we're really happy to have Tom Boogaart here today. I want to read a couple of words, lovely words, that actually Dr. Travis West, who's been here just a few weeks ago, said about Tom. Over the course of Tom's 32-year tenure as a faculty member at Western Theological Seminary, he spent thousands of hours teaching, shaping the hearts and minds of hundreds of students. Dr. Boogaart taught with and supported dozens of faculty colleagues, helped design and implement several curricula, served under 3 presidents, and devoted his life to one seminary and its mission, being Old Testament professor at Western Theological Seminary. His career demonstrates what is possible when a person's vocational ambition does not lead them to seek greener pastures elsewhere, but rather to sink roots deeper and deeper into the soil of the place where they are, enabling a mutually beneficial relationship. Tom is also a part of the Hope Church community, and we appreciate his contributions and sharing with us today as well. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Jane. Oops. Oh, good enough. Well, pleasure to be with you this morning, and I want to read what I wrote here just to let you know what we're going to try to do. I read this again, I thought, really? We're going to do this is what we're going to do? A slow reading of the creation account in Genesis shows how the Creator is intimately connected to creation. The people of Israel depicted God as spirit breath, breath expanding as words, and words congealing as world. The biblical cosmology connected spirit and world and anticipated the modern one that connects energy and matter. The people of Israel experienced God as always near at hand. Every breath, drink, meal, canopy were sacraments, infusions of divine power to sustain life. The loss of this biblical cosmology has contributed to the weakening of the Christian church and to the indifference of Christians to the collapse of the created order. Okay, we will touch on, wow, and all in 1 hour, you can imagine. If I could do that 1 hour, that would be like a course. So, but what we will touch on all those, but we'll touch on it through one particular activity. We're going to look at Genesis 1 carefully. We're going to do a slow reading. Actually, what we're going to do is we're going to draw it together. We're going to imagine it. So one of the problems that I discovered over the years as a teacher is that the imagination that we have as children gets kind of wiped out as we grow older. And we see it as somewhat of a dangerous faculty. It might lead us astray or something, and it's rational thought that keeps us on the right path. But imagination is the key to a deeper engagement with Scripture. And so we'll do that. We'll do that in a minute. We're going to look at Genesis 1. And before we do that, I want to do a little exercise with you because there's an issue about Genesis 1. Basically, the issue is, what in the world is it? Is it a poem? Is it history writing? And so it's very important that we define what we sometimes call its genre, its literary type. And so that becomes important because if you assume that it's something that it isn't, it might lead you to ask questions that are not necessarily appropriate or helpful in trying to more deeply engage what it actually is. So I'm going to start this way. Listen very carefully, and look very carefully, because I'm going to ask you some very specific questions when I'm done. So this is Robert Frost. It's a poem you all know. Stopping by the woods on a snowy evening. Okay. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there's some mistake. The only other sound's the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep. But I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Okay? What was the horse's name? Where was the woods? You can ask the question. I mean, it sort of makes sense. And Frost is basing his poetry on human experience. There was a moment somewhere, a woods somewhere, a moment in which all of these wonderful thoughts came to him, but it doesn't get you very far, does it? And we do the same thing with the creation story. We kind of ask the wrong question. How could you have plant life before you have a sun? Maybe there's a mistake in the way the people of Israel understood creation. 7 24-hour days. The world was, because how's that? And then how does that fit in with a modern scientific story? And off we go. And then somehow in that conversation, some of the deeper meanings of Genesis 1 get lost. So here's what I would suggest to you. If you read scripture like Isaiah 2, there's a depiction, and there's a visionary, a prophetic vision of the end times, but there are also prophetic visions of the first times, the begin times, if you will. And Genesis 1, I would suggest to you, is closer to prophetic visionary than it is scientific or historical. It doesn't mean there isn't really important information to be found there, but that's its genre, that's its type. So what I'd like to do with you is read it slowly, just ask some questions, and there's a lot we could do, and then I'm going to shift to what I think is one of the more profound insights of Genesis that then has real ramifications for us today, especially in the collapse of the created order and Christians' general indifference to it. So let's start. In the beginning, Bereshit bara Elohim, my students all have to memorize it in Hebrew. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Okay? Already a lot of discussion about what that all means. Let me tell you what it was like in the beginning before what we know the heavens and the earth were. Maybe it's an introduction of some sort. It's moving you forward. Pay attention a little bit to the language, the heavens and the earth. What are the heavens? We'll get to that in a minute. The earth, okay, it doesn't exist yet, but before. The earth was a formless void. All right? Okay, what do you see? I'm going to draw it. What is it? What's a formless void? Oh, Hebrew will help. Tohu vavohu, okay? That does it, doesn't it? What's a formless void? Okay, well, we're going to get some help because we're going to get 3 other words that identify the same thing. A formless void. Well, I don't even know what to say. Is that a good translation? I don't know, Barry, what do you think? Is that a good translation? Empty, form, it's fine. Something is formless and something void. So the earth was a formless void. Okay, darkness was upon the face of the deep. Okay, well, what about darkness? What's darkness? And everybody's saying, absence of light. Maybe. John 1 refers back to the story and says, Jesus was the light and the darkness was not able to overcome it. Does darkness have agency? Well, the Bible seems to use it as an image. It's pointing to something that maybe has agency. Darkness was upon the face of the deep. This is my name in Hebrew, Tehom. Guess because my students thought I was dense. The deep. Now that's a difficult one for us too, and of course we're lifting up language from a culture far, far removed from our own. These words don't circulate anymore. Maybe even some of the concepts behind them don't necessarily circulate anymore. But this one I think we can get, the deep. So how do we use the deep nowadays? Deep, sea, deep, space. It's something, it's a word that we use when we start moving into categories of things that cannot be measured. The deep oceans. Even today we haven't explored the deep. We don't even know what's going on in some places yet. Discovering new life forms in the deep that we never saw before. So what we're getting is, okay, one more thing. Darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God, Ruach Elohim, was, mirachefet, was hovering over the face of the waters. Okay, so we've got it's tohu vavohu. It's formless and void. It's also called the deep, and it's also called the waters. What is that? What do you see? You're supposed to see something ocean-like, something oceanic. And when we say oceanic, it's almost immeasurable. So, I don't know. How do you... Yeah, it both has boundaries and it doesn't have boundaries, but it just oozes. So you have darkness, and then darkness is on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of the God. All of these are concepts, actually, that suggest ubiquity, suggest omnipresence. The deep is just spreading. The darkness just spreads. The Spirit of God is a symbol of God's ubiquity. Everything's on the face of the deep. Okay? Is that what you're seeing? Something like that. Now we get a shift. Now we say, and God said. This is really very significant. And God said. So now the Spirit of God, the wind of God, so maybe the effusion of, I don't know what word to use exactly, was once expansive, but now it's particular. Now all of a sudden the Spirit is gathered together, and now God says, let there be. And God said, Vayomer Elohim, God said. Now, here we got to pause a little bit too, because what does it mean to speak? We've got to pause on this a little bit. Speech is so... Here's where the Reformed people actually get it pretty right compared to other denominations. Focusing on God's speech, the sovereignty of God, the imagery of king, strengths and weaknesses, speaks, and the word of God goes forth. But what is stopping? What is speak? I'm speaking to you now. Okay? Speak is, I take in ruach, wind, and then I pass it through I got all kinds of stuff to pass it through. I got my vocal cords, I got my tongue, I got my teeth, I got my lips, and I articulate my breath, and it comes out as words, right? Words are articulated breath. In other words, they're spiritual. They have to do with the Bible defines words as the spirit of the mouth. Actually, in Psalm 33, spirit of the mouth. So my words go forth, and actually, my words are actually entering into your world because I'm moving your eardrums, right? Something is vibrating in your head, not much. Just, sorry. Just a little vibration here and there. And the older I get, very little. There's less vibration all the time. Oh, crap. But anyway, what do I have to look forward to? Silence. Maybe, well, that might be all bad. But anyway, I'm vibrating your eardrums. In that sense, I have power over you. My words have power. They do. And we know and if the words vibrate enough and if they get down into your hearts, then they can even live there. And then they can begin to animate you, and you will start to do things based on what is in your heart. But how do you get in the heart in the first place? Well, there's a lot of ways to get to the heart. There's touch as well. But words, they're powerful. They're very, very powerful. But how powerful are my words? Well, I can tell you. Here's a teaching. Not much. Not much. You pour out your heart to the students. You want them to share some insights, and you tell a story, and, they're falling asleep over here, or they're actually late. In my later years, they're playing games they're not taking notes, they're playing games on their computer while you're talking to them. How effective are you? Well, some get in, some move there. And I'm being a little facetious. There's a lot more happening in a classroom than that. And I'm giving you a different, I'm trying to be a little funny about it. But no, it's a significant, it was my call. It's what I did. Because it was so spiritual. It was so important. And it wasn't the word, it was the words, but the words were the means to the heart, and the heart can change worlds, right? And that's what Scripture is supposed to be. It's supposed to be words kept in your heart, not on a page or things you fight about. Well, I suppose you could fight about them, but that's maybe part of getting in your heart. Maybe that's why we fight, because they're in our hearts. But anyway, okay, but now my words have a little power. I never got too excited about it. But God's words are stable. God's words become reality. Much, much more powerful. God said, "Let there be light." First day. And there was light. And then, you remember? Okay, let me just read it to you. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good. That's really important, but I'll get to that. And God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, day one. Now, how do I draw? What do you see? It's an image, but somehow there's a separation, and the darkness that was there in the beginning has now been gathered into, it's been bordered. There's evening and morning now in this imagery, and light is during the day, so it's light, dark day. It's actually dark light. That's why in the Jewish tradition, that's why their Sabbath begins in the evening. The evening actually is the time when you're potentially closer to God. But so there's darkness and there's light, day one. Okay? Whatever that darkness was, it's now been gathered. It's been kind of separated. Light is now in. And what is light, by the way? All language strains. Human language is so limited, and it strains so hard to explain the deepest dimensions of our reality. So your words are both highly prized, but fairly compromised. It's really hard to find the words. And that's why imagery and imagination probably get you the farthest if you really want to go deep into the actual stuff of your reality. So what is light? I'll leave it at that. But there's some, well, you make immediate connections to light. Light is life, it's vitality. So now here now gets interesting. Now day two, and God said, let there be a dome in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the water. Oh, we're back to those waters. Okay? Sorry for this terrible drawing, but whatever this mass was, this amorphous something or other, called waters, so it's fluid, it's oceanic, it's substantial, it's something substantial, but it's fluid. Now all of a sudden, the waters are gathered. So let there be a firmament, let there be a rakia in the midst of the waters. So now the waters are being separated by a space that's being created in the midst of the waters, right in the middle of the waters. Okay? And now there's waters above the firmament, and there's waters below the firmament. Okay? And now we have the second day. Okay, then, third day, and God said, let the waters under the firmament, under this atmosphere, this sky or firmament, let the waters be gathered into one place, okay, and let the dry land appear. And so now we got another separation. So the waters that are now, maybe I should make it more like this, the waters that are below the firmament now get gathered into one place, and the dry land appears. That's day 3. Okay. Now the waters are every ocean, lake, river, creek, stream, all talked to, but they're now bounded in some way. There's shorelines, for instance. There's banks, and then the dry land appears. And then these then become the fundamental structures. And then the rest of the creation story, God goes to each of these different areas and then fills them with life. Okay, so God said, let the earth bring forth vegetation, plants yielding seed, fruit trees of every kind, and it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation. What's interesting about this is that the life-giving power of God has been delegated to the earth itself. The earth brings forth. The earth has life-giving capacities, and it of itself brings forth vegetation, okay? In Holland, that's got to be the tulip, I guess. You can tell I took an art class. It's terrible. Now God said, let there be lights in the firmament. Another, so we get, now the firmament here is going to be sun, the sun, moon, and stars, okay, are going to be put in the firmament, within the firmament, actually below the waters that were there. And it was so, and God made the 2 great lights, and then God said, let the waters bring forth. Same imagery again. So the waters, if I have them over here, so we've got fish in seas, and then you get the animals, and and then you have a picture. You've got a picture here. This is drawing you a picture to try to get you some idea of the nature of your reality as it began, in the beginning. Now let me show you something here. There was a time in oral cultures in which people drew. They drew. If you were a teacher, like in the 14th or 13th or 15th century, and you were trying to instruct people about Genesis, kind of what we do, they would have done something of what I just have done, and they would come up with pictures. Here's my favorite. I've collected a bunch of these, but here's my favorite. Now you tell me what you see there.
Raise your hand so the mic can come to you.
Or just yell. Yeah, yeah. I mean, hey, thank you. Yay! Yeah, some version of what I drew. So it's God is a king, sovereign. There's the throne. Okay, that's classic ancient imagery. This is particularly interesting, and this is what I want to focus on with you. This is God spoke, right? But what's coming out of here?
Words.
Yeah, words, but flame, energy. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Something. Now here's what's this? Darkness and the waters. Huh? That's the tohu vavohu. Darkness is still on the face of it, so to speak. And then and then here's your little river here, and here's dry land, and there's a swan, I guess, on the river, and there's trees, the ocean in the distance. Humankind is here. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? So, yeah, go ahead.
Tom, I find it interesting in that picture that God is outside of the creation rather than involved within it,
Yeah,
speaking into it.
Yeah, what's interesting is if you, God's hands are gently kind of holding the whole thing. That's kind of interesting. But yes, God is both outside. It's kind of the immanence transcendence debate that we always have. God isn't totally absorbed in the created order in a sort of pantheistic notion, and yet intimately connected to it. Okay? Right? Any other? So I want to talk some more about creation by the Word of God. That God speaks God's words, what I said, God's breath becomes words, God's words become the world. And this would lay the basis for what I would call the Israelite, called sacramental view of reality. So that the world that we're living in is being sustained moment to moment from the beginning by the very energy of God that has congealed to make the world and its structure around you. All the ways in which the parts of creation have been integrated and come together is a life-giving system of which we are a part. And when we live our lives, we are imbibing, and there's a spiritual transfer. Now here, how many of you have had this experience? So you say, okay, let's have a couple friends over for dinner tonight. Say, okay. So you mark a space in your calendar. Call, let's say, 2 couples up. So there can be 6 of you around the table. Say, hey, how about February 15? Are you free? Friday night. Come around 6 for dinner. Would that be good? Good, good, good. Everybody's coming. So then you start to prepare. Well, in our house, get out the vacuum cleaner, clean things up, make sure your house is, it's part of hospitality, right? It's to make sure your house is ready, it's clean. You both want to let them see your house because you're proud of it. You got some interesting things there if you want to show them, and maybe you sit down in the living room briefly start with a glass of wine and cheese, and then you move to the table, right? Then you got to go buy the ingredients. Then you got to cook all of that. Okay? I mean, it can take hours and hours. I mean, if you're really going to do it right, it takes hours to do it. you prepare that meal. You lay it on the table. You invite your friends. Get a second bottle of wine. Sit at the table. Okay. You eat. You talk. And you're in the canopy of the house itself. The house is a canopy, of course. Of course, without that wall and without that roof, you'd be dead, right? Everybody needs a canopy. I mean, in some sense, you know, everybody needs a firmament, a ruach, a rakia, I mean, that then holds out the chaotic waters that can come breaking in. So, okay, my little canopy, I had trouble with my chimney. Got an old house, didn't know it, water's leaking in, bats are getting in too, actually, but, you know, they need a canopy too. So you call somebody and say, oh, you know, you got new flashing and your shingles are old and, you know, you got some trouble here. I got to repair that canopy because I just can't have, and then I got termites, okay? The wood got soft or carpenter ants get in, they start chewing away, and I'm starting to lose my canopy, my rakia. So I repair it. It's kind of tikkun olam, repairing the world. You got to prepare your canopy. That's part of it. So when you invite your guests, you want, this is your house. You've been working at this house. You've been keeping this house, what, beautiful, warm. We call it the living room. It's a great word. We can't live except in these defined spaces, but they all need attention. In the same way that the world needs attention once these borders are all set. That's enough. But anyway, so I'm back to my friends. You invite them over, you got your house, you want to show them stuff, and you start hearing, oh, now lately it's, one of my friends says, lately with my older friends, it's an organ recital. Hey, you know, I just had part of my kidney removed. Oh, how was that? Oh, it's terrible, you know. But I survived, you know. Anyway, you're talking. This is for me age appropriate, because this is kind of conversations we have. So then, okay, and you're talking. And then you're eating, and there is no time anymore. There's no clock. It's 11 o'clock. You're still, and you have experienced, because of the food, which is a gift of God, that you imbibe that energizes your body, that's a spiritual infusion. You're in a wonderful space, a canopy, that's a spiritual experience. You've actually had a sacrament together, and the friendship that you feel with each other transcends death, really, in a way. It's what you long for. It's what you want. And so God has created the world. We don't see it this way anymore because we've become bloody materialistic, obviously, measure ourselves by only what we can grab and hold, and we think the more we have, the bigger we are or the better we are. But that's not the real spiritual experience of life. These moments are those moments, and you experience all of that. And in the ancient world, there would have been a greater acknowledgement that water is God's gift. It was spoken into reality by God. Water has a spiritual component. You drink it, and that power infuses your body and sustains your life. The food is brought forth from the earth according to the word of the Lord. It's a spiritual reality. And you eat that, and it restores your body. I mean, we fundamentally get it, I guess, because we have the sacrament of the Lord's Supper that's kind of, hey, people, remember, hospitality, remember. You know, Jesus is the table spread. Jesus' body actually is our meal, so to speak. And then you can go off in all kinds of interesting directions. But it's all about the very stuff. Every drink is a sacrament. Every breath is a sacrament. You take from the atmosphere, you breathe it in. Of course, we know more than the Israelites did. They didn't know anything about oxygen and carbon dioxide or any of that stuff. We take it in, infuse our bodies with it, and then we exhale it how many times a day? I have no idea. Someone would know, thousands, I don't know. Every breath is a sacrament. Every meal is a sacrament. Every drink is every canopy is a sacrament. Every table is a place where you transcend your isolation and aloneness as a human being, and you begin to make links to other human beings, and you begin to realize that you're part of a family that God has called into existence from the very beginning. God is one of the interesting images in Scripture, God is the everlasting Father, okay? Again, male imagery, but God is the parent that has brought all of us into being, and we, therefore, are the family of God, and this is why it hurts God, and our history is nothing but the children of God killing each other, okay, that's history, but that isn't history as it was in the beginning. That isn't how it was intended. And so, now here's the thing, and I'll bring it back. I am quite shocked is a word, amazed is another word, how little the Christian church seems to care about the degradation of the physical world. And I think it's because we get it wrong from the beginning and we don't see this picture, and we think the material world is inert matter, and we think that human beings are spiritual souls and that salvation will be going off into some other realm to commune with God somewhere, somehow, I guess. And so we do the same thing with our bodies. So our souls are our eternal essence. Our bodies are throwaways. Well, yeah. And we lose the understanding that the body and the soul are so intricately entwined, as we are so intricately entwined in the earth itself, because all of this together was God's plan for our flourishing. So that view of reality works real well with the present economic arrangements, because the world's just raw material. You can't kill it, you can't do anything to it, it's just there. And now we're, of course, realizing the limits of that thought, and we're realizing, oh my goodness, we can so despoil these systems that their life-bearing capacity, and we may not physically survive, or at least many of us, we certainly won't survive in the numbers that we are now if this continues. And so why are Christians indifferent generally? Not entirely, not everybody, I get that, but just generally indifferent. And I think it's because we don't live deeply and fully enough. And we don't realize moment to moment, breath to breath, drink to drink, meal to meal, canopy to canopy, friendship, love. These are all spiritual realities. And this is why, of course, our images of heaven have nothing to do with souls floating somewhere with God. I mean, God, I'd rather be dead than that, frankly. I don't even understand what that even means, because if somehow the very things that are dearest to me are physical things, the love of my wife, the touch of my wife, my grandchildren. We got our little girl sleeping right now. We're going to bring her to church, my granddaughter. These are all intended to be one experience of God's gift and love to us. And if you don't think about that, or put it this way, you will only defend things you love. You don't love the earth, you won't defend it, right? Obvious. So we don't love enough. We don't love deeply enough, or we love so selectively. And can you expand from that? Can you love more broadly, more fully? Can you love the earth, really? Does that make you a pantheist? Of course not. Of course not. But but if you see it as a gift, if you begin to experience it as a gift, you'll live differently. And the goal is to move as much as we can back to a picture in which these systems cohere, and which life can flourish, and that would be the goal of our existence, right? Anyway, so enough of that. Any thoughts or comments?
This is Peter speaking. Just a comment on Larry's question about the image. To me, that's a birthing image. And I was intimately involved in the birthing of my children. But they're now on their own, sorta. We're still all connected in a family structure. But I created something that left me, sorta. In that image, I see birthing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. There is a tradition late in Israelite life that called Mount Zion, which was the connecting point between God for the ancient Israelites. They called it the navel of the earth. So they saw this too. They saw this energy coming forth as a kind of umbilical cord, and there was a navel, and so they thought of Mount Zion as the navel of the earth. Yeah.
Two thoughts, is Jane speaking. One is when you mentioned that really all moments are sacred, it reminded me of Quaker belief, which is why they don't celebrate sacraments, because they believe that every moment is a sacrament.
Yeah.
And so you wouldn't separate aside particular moments or particular things to be sacraments. Yeah, that was the first thing. The second thing was that on my way here, honestly, I was leaning back, driving, looking at clouds, and there are a couple of trees that I pass every time I come into Holland, and I truly love them. And I just was loving it today as I drove by it.
Yeah.
So that idea of taking moments to identify specific parts of creation around you or nature around you, it changes things.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
changes the way I feel. It
Right.
changes the way I come into church.
Yeah. And then do we embrace that as a spiritual transaction? You know, that somehow power is being transferred to you, life-giving power is being infused in you by your participation or appreciation for what you've seen. That's tough for us because our cosmology doesn't support, frankly, our operating cosmology doesn't support that thought. You know, the interesting thing about trees is, I'm a tree lover too, but you know what? When I'm walking, I do a lot of walking, and I remember the trees that used to be there. It's really strange, but there was this magnificent walnut tree just across the street from our house that I think the new owners cut down for the wood, and they made money off it. It was at least 50 feet high, and it branched out. It's the most magnificent walnut tree I have ever seen. And when they drop their walnut, I miss that smell that walnut has, you know. And every time I look, I miss my tree. I thought, ooh, okay. And that's kind of there's loss. You know, there's loss in loving, of course. But, yeah.
I think that's really a powerful image to me of God with his arms around the world and his breath coming into the world. God is still with us.
Yeah.
And if we think about that, he's holding us, he's holding the world in his arms, and his breath is still with us. So what does that say to our response to God? But it's a comfort to know that his breath is in
Right.
the world, his
Yeah.
presence is still here.
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
both wonderful. There's both a head and a heart component to what you're saying. The heart component is you have to open your heart to it. The head component is what we're just doing this morning. You're saying here's a certain way that we understand our world to be. We have a certain cosmology. I'll use the word cosmology, a way, worldview, we'll call it. And what I'm saying is, we're off on the wrong track. If we're going to continue with this worldview and let it be the foundation for how we think and participate in the world, we're not going to get to God is always near to us, as near as every breath, for instance. But if you can that's the mental piece. If you can think about that, you can bracket it and say, hey, I could entertain. A worldview is something that we, in a sense, absorb and let me try this other one on and see what happens. See if that helps me live more fully and more deeply. So that's the rational piece of it. That was always the balance as a teacher, is you've got to appeal to mind and heart really almost at the same time. So there's a head component and a heart component to more fully experiencing God's presence with us. But I can tell you this, we are such a lonely people. I mean, we have isolated ourselves in so many ways, and I think at the deep, sometimes, people are afraid, fear drives them, fear makes them buy into conspiracy theories and all kinds of things, because they want to have some sense that they're connected. It's very dangerous when a leader can play on fears and say, follow me and I will make you great again or something. But deep down, it's loneliness. Feeling of isolation. Nobody sees me. Nobody cares about me. I'm here. Nobody even understands me. Well, fair enough. we're complicated. But you can begin to deal with it at the most essential level by living your life with a sense that God is present with you, even in these everyday things, and then you can begin to overcome that loneliness. Anyway, that's my observation. Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Jonathan David here. Well, I've heard from so many Christians that loving the earth means focusing too much on the material, that this world is temporary and passing, that what truly matters is the spiritual and the eternal, that investing too much affection in creation can distract us from the Creator. I totally disagree with this view, because I feel like, Genesis sends you to practice stewardship, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, what would you say to someone who thinks that loving the earth is loving something materialistic and shallow, and that is not something spiritual?
Well, that's what I'm trying to say is, no, I don't think that, of course. Are you married?
No.
Have a girlfriend?
Yes.
Are you in love?
Yes.
Does that turn you away from God? No. Loving something deeply doesn't, it's not a zero-sum game, right? In fact, it can go both ways. If you experience genuine love in your life, it opens your heart to the love of God. Or you can begin to understand the love of God, and it opens your heart to loving others. But it's not, I would say, not a zero-sum game. That kind of attitude that is the worldview or the cosmology that I'm saying isn't working. It doesn't work. It's not working for us. And that's why I would say, if we're going, let's just face it, our churches are falling apart. Okay? Whatever the theology is, it's not sustaining us. Now, the church isn't over, and it's a complicated thing. There's all kinds of wonderful things happening within the church. But that kind of theology eventually, that's not a foundation on which the church can build. in my opinion. Oh.
Can everyone hear me? Okay, so I'm just going to start this off with a little bit of context. One of my biggest hyperfixations right now is anti-consumerism, and like that's kind of like I'm considering a career in professional organizing, and I just like I know we touched on this already, but I'd love to know like what effect stuff and like I don't know just how our brains are wired to consume. There's multiple documentaries on this if you are interested, but like I'd love to know how that affects faith and like our relationship with God specifically.
Right. Well, we're a consumptive, Christianity is a consumptive religion, right? We eat at the table. That's our main sacrament. So it's not about consumption as such. Part of the way in which we experience the love of God is through drinking and eating. That's all there, of course. And all the stuff I'm talking about, the canopy that you build, it takes material to do that. It's not an anti-materialist religion. It's a consumptive religion in a way. The issue, it seems to me, is that consumption without spirituality is addiction. You see what I'm saying? So the church's job is to heal our consumptive urges, or deepen them, so that so when you're sitting at that table with your friends and there is no time anymore, and you're just going on, it's about the taste of the food. It's about how good it is, and that's opening your heart to these friendships and these kindnesses and things like that. But it isn't saying, hey, you got seconds? I mean, if we're consuming in a way in which we understand the spirituality of it, and we feel and can recognize the infusion that we're experiencing, essentially, of love through this, that's the end of the addiction. Then you get more into issues of care and concern. Anyway, that would be my answer. Does that help?
Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm wondering, I've been thinking a lot in the last years actually about the changing nature of creation rather than the static nature of creation, and wondering about coming to realize, that there were 6 forms of two-legged humans before Homo sapiens, that there was an asteroid that wiped out 80% of the animals on the planet, that there was an ice age that came and went and came again, and that all seems very non-static, evolutionary, as it were. And I'm wondering, theologically, how, and from the point of view of the creation story in Genesis, how do we reconcile the fact that the environment and creation itself and our understanding of the wider universe and black holes and everything else with billions of galaxies, how does that fit with that theological view of it? Seemed to be, 7 days and that's it. What about the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th day?
Yeah. Well, I would say 7 days is a poetic trope, and but this is a kind of a one-shot deal. But actually, I would say this fits really, really well. First of all, the dynamism is the continuing breathing. God continues to breathe. But what you can't see in here, and what we haven't talked enough about, at least to my awareness, is that the earth brings forth, the waters bring forth, and that opens. I mean, it's not an Israel is no evolutionary. They don't know nearly what they knew. Doesn't mean they didn't have real insight into the nature of reality, but we have a little more information. More information is coming our way. Future generations will kind of laugh at our I mean, apparently now there wasn't a black hole after all. There wasn't a Big Bang. So they're coming with they're getting new data, and they're readdressing their big cosmological picture. But it says, but what's so dynamic about let the earth bring forth? Let the waters bring forth. And so it isn't God manipulating. It's the earth has the capacity to create and bear life. And there's nothing in that picture that puts you at odds with an evolutionary understanding of human life, at least as near as I can tell. I think that's kind of a false flag, actually. But I would say, I get what you're saying, but I don't see the Bible ever depicting this as static, no. Even though the picture, if you just look at it, and I don't know, this is, anyway, I'm again, with the person who did this, what more they thought, I don't know.
I wanted to just share a story which I think is in sync with what you're talking about this morning. But Judy and I had opportunity a number of years ago to visit the Redwood Forest in Northern California. And I remember standing in that space with its high elevations and canopy over the top, and there's a sort of light infusion that takes place as you're standing there. I remember thinking to myself, wow, this is just like being in a cathedral. Mm. And when I lived with that for a moment, I thought to myself, no, the cathedral is an attempt to recreate where I am right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. The, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you for your presentation, Tom. I think what you said makes a very strong case for why it's important to love the earth. To put that in my own words, you've shown us how the earth is a gift of God, right? Created in a way that is the source and sustenance of our own lives. And typically, we understand that if someone gives us such a tremendous gift, our obligation is to love it. And I think in this context, love means so many different things, but it often means to take care of what we love. Mm-hmm. So to not take care of this tremendous gift God gives us would seem to be an affront to God. Mm-hmm. And so the loving the earth versus loving something else, that dichotomy doesn't make sense to me. Loving the earth seems to be central to the way we honor God, who gave us this tremendous gift.
Right, right, yeah. Yeah. But I would say that I'd even want to go deeper a little bit, because obligation itself comes out of the realization of intimacy. And so anyway, that's not changing anything you said. But one closing thought: care. How do we care for the earth? What can we do? And there's a lot of things at a lot of levels that we can do, but I want to suggest you something pretty simple. And it's based on, again, my appreciation of the Jewish tradition. And there's the tradition within Judaism called tikkun olam, repairing the world. Just means repairing the world. And the idea was that God had created the world and put these intricate systems into place, but the seams keep unraveling. And then our job is to go in and restore, kind of like mend the earth. But it takes place in the simplest of ways, but people don't think this. So my whole goal in life was to be a repair guy. I don't know how I became a teacher, because I like to repair things. And I like to fix things. So I'm no good at it. I used to have an old car that we couldn't afford to pay anything. I'd try to fix it. Brakes go out, blah, blah, blah. But now we got a house, an old house. There's fix, work on this, work on that. And I never thought much about it until maybe about 10 years ago, and it finally dawned on me that, you know, that chimney that was leaking, that's just the beginning of the story. There's all kinds of stuff that plumbing has to happen. But when I get done, after I call in the name of the Lord a few times when things don't go well, when I get done and I have usually solved the problem and I've fixed it, I feel so good. And it never dawned on me that that was a spiritual practice. This is Tom Boogaart's spirituality. I never saw it as spiritual, but it's, for me, absolutely spiritual. I have made my little contribution to repairing the world. So, you know, with global warming and all there's major effort that has to take place at all kinds of levels. But I have very little influence on those levels. You know, I can try to vote for people who care about the environment. I can give money to movements. I can show up and do all kinds of things. But you know what it really, for all of us, just all the little ways in which you heal and repair and restore are spiritual. And that's the Christian life for us. And so all of, and then the more you do that, the more you're conscious of all these structures around you that you've always been kind of taking for granted, but they all need attention. Okay, anyway, so that's it. Thanks for your attention. Yeah. Done.
Thank you very much, Tom, for sharing, being a part of the contributions today. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And I'll say Creation Care Ministry made me think about all the work they do. And I know scheduling walks and kayaking and biking, because our Creation Care Ministry knows that, yes, doing things among creation help us love it.
Yeah.
And yes, I thank Creation Care Ministry for doing all of that as well. Some of you may have read in Salt and Light that next week was going to be Deborah Harsma. And Deborah has a new position and has had to change that. So she's going to talk about, what does it mean to Christians if there's life outside Earth in May. So Deb will be coming in May. And thanks to David Myers, he's invited his good friend, David Beckman, who was, as you know, an economist at the World Bank, but for 29 years was president of Bread for the World. He has a new book coming out in 2026, which is called Poverty Abolitionists. And so David will be coming to us next week from Alexandria, Virginia, via Zoom. You'll be able to interact with him as well. In the presentation, but it's entitled Faith in the Politics of Poverty in a Difficult Time. So that you can read more about that on page 13 in today's bulletin. So next week will be David Beckman. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That was rich. And
Oh.
I'm definitely going to watch the stream on that again.
Yeah.
But
Well, we were at your house. Oops.
I know. I was thinking about those